Here's an idea. All work and no play is exactly what happens because everything that you do that's play is also work. Over the past couple weeks, I have been playing Witcher 3, which is a massive, well-designed, beautiful, story-driven game that I hate and dread playing. Feels good to get that out. Okay. I don't really hate The Witcher, though to be perfectly honest, I might not like Geralt very much. He is very stern, and all he does is grumble. There's so much grumbling.
Damn doublets chafing my armpits.
Really what I hate is the fact that The Witcher is a 100+ hour game that all of my friends are playing and talking about at the same time they're talking about the new season of Orange is the New Black and Jurassic World and Sense8, and now that the Martian movie got announced, everybody's like, dude, you gotta read The Martian, and I am just one man. Just one man. There are only so many hours in the day. It's 24 in case you were wondering. Of course, I am one man in the rather particular position of talking about all of these kinds of things for a job, but I have had this conversation with, normal people, though particularly people over the age of 18. So if you are in high school or younger, I would be curious to know what you think about this idea that the things that we are supposed to be doing for fun increasingly resemble drudgery. Regardless of your age and set of responsibilities, though, if you are an active member of the culture that produces all of this entertainment, you are no doubt experiencing the onslaught of stuff at which you might point your eyeballs. And if you spend any amount of time on the internet, the expectation that you be at least familiar with a fair amount of it is always present. The question isn't, I don't think, is it just too much? There have been more consumables than hours in a lifetime for quite a while, and we haven't all collectively lost it. Or if we have, having lost it, replaced, still totally got it, a very long time ago. The question, I think, is what is the best attitude to have towards this glut of fun? The two guys we talked about in the remakes episode, Theodore Adorno and Max Horkheimer, have one particularly cantankerous perspective. They say that the culture industry, which remember they say exists because of capitalism's influence on the economy of creative works, collapses the space between leisure and labor. They write, capitalist production so confines consumers, body and soul, that they fall helpless victim to whatever is offered them, end quote. They talk about how the economic machinery that produces culture both sustains and commands the masses, quote, whether at work or at leisure, which is akin to work. Their theories rely heavily on the idea that much of popular culture is hegemonic, made by one set of people and handed down to the masses in such a way that it organizes a hierarchy of power and influence. Producers here with power and consumers here without. Producers need consumers to work in the form of spending their free time and hard-earned Skrilla on entertainment so that the producers can profit. Ultimately, though, this means that consumers have the power, so it's up to the producers to make sure that they don't know that. So producers create a situation where it feels like consumers have to spend their money to see these things, or else they are an outsider. They don't belong. They're missing out. And so consuming the culture that is made for them becomes not unlike a responsibility. Jonathan Crary channels a similar idea in his book 24/7, where he talks about how up until recently it was only while sleeping that one was not laboring, even passively, through things like, having eyeballs that see advertisements.
It's better in a bacon bowl.
But now, with the pervasiveness of the internet and all of the content that we create and curate, not to mention all of the data that we track, record, and store, it is all generating profits 24/7. TV stations used to go off the air. Radio stations would stop broadcasting. The presses would cease for the night, but Idea Channel is always available. Thanks, capitalism. The counter to this is that even if we do feel some responsibility, for whatever reason, to consume things, there is ultimately a continuum of investment in our own culture. We can choose to be more or less invested in certain things. The media police won't come to your house and wreck up the place if you didn't watch the most recent episode of True Detective or the most recent Smosh video. Though embeds are starting to autoplay on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook, so who knows what's next?
Now
Advertisements that stop playing if you shut your eyes.
in a bacon bowl.
I unplug my Kinect when I'm not using it. think it's terrifying. The things we do watch, read, or play, ideally we stick with them because they give us a sense of accomplishment, because they are cathartic, fulfilling, entertaining, challenging. Reading Homestuck, binging on Netflix, and playing massive open world games can sometimes feel like work, but ultimately they are not labor because we are in control and they are finite tasks. They have an ending. We determine our own level of involvement and why. But sometimes I do feel like I can't, or at least shouldn't, skip things like the new season of Orange is the New Black, or Sense8, or Witcher 3, for that matter. Which makes them at least a little bit like work. Which, okay, you could argue that that is my problem, and if I wasn't who I am, in several senses, that wouldn't be the case. But for me, Witcher 3 really does solidify that there might be something to this play is work tension, because the game is about jobs. You take contracts, you haggle.
That settles it then.
And after only a few hours of playing through the main narrative, the player's level lags behind what is recommended, so if you want to continue, you have to go find work. Witcher, of course, is not alone at this party. The GTA games, Skyrim, Fable, Mass Effect, Red Dead Redemption, which I took to calling Red Dead errands not long before I stopped playing it, are all varyingly about work. And I understand the common refrain that we want our money's worth for the expensive games that we are buying. And one of the ways that we understand culturally to provide optional additional side quests is by taking on contracts, optional contracts. But the question I'm asking is not if games are too long, which is a great question that Jamin asked in his video titled just exactly that, but rather whether or not work is the best way to frame that length.
Never taken on a pan contract.
Witcher 3 was really just the wolf's bane that broke the horse's back, and yes, I had saddlebags. It cemented for me a thing that I was hoping it would disprove, a thing that is true of video games especially by virtue of the possibility of their scope and audience, but which exists in shades across much of popular big budget media, that if you want to become intimately involved in modern popular culture, you're gonna have to work for it. Maybe in more ways than one. What do you guys think? How much work do you feel like you have to invest in play? Let us know in the comments, and I will respond to some in next week's comment response video. This week's comment response video is about your thoughts on accuracy in movies, and you can see that by clicking right here. This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these laboring witchers. We have a Facebook and IRC and a subreddit links in the doobly-doo, and the tweet of the week comes from Evan Maltby, who points us towards an art project where a woman made a billboard displaying just a single word that she wanted to be the only person to use. It's really good.